Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, who was a KGB, a mid-rank KGB thug, who claims never really to have believed in the communist claptrap that he was putting out, who nevertheless obviously imbibed a sense of Soviet patriotism and some kind of belief in aspects of that ideology, and has certainly accepted the Soviet theory that the world is out to get Russia.
Dr. Kagan holds a PhD in Russian and Soviet military history from Yale. As far as you're concerned, how should we be understanding the events that are unfolding in Ukraine?
Several days ago, Russian President Vladimir Putin launched an unprovoked and unjustified and illegal attack on Ukraine for the purpose of conquering it. His objective is very clearly to replace the pro-Western government headed by Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's current president, and install some kind of governance structure that will bring Ukraine, as he sees it, back into the Russian fold. It's not at all obvious to me or anyone really what kind of governance structure Putin has in mind at this point. But it is very clear that he intends to do this at the muzzle of the tank, and that he is willing to kill quite a lot of people and do quite a lot of damage in Ukraine in order to regain control of the country. That is what is going on. It's part of a larger effort that Putin is engaged in to reconstitute the Soviet Union in some way, or possibly the Tsarist Empire in some way. But he has written lengthy articles and he has given lengthy speeches explaining that he thinks that Ukraine has no right to exist as an independent state, that it has no nationhood, that it is simply a natural part of Russia that was reft from Russia. And then just, the last larger thing to zoom out from all of that, he's been very explicit about his intention to destroy the NATO alliance, to break the ties between the United States and Europe, to change the world order fundamentally, and to return the United States to what he regards as its proper sphere, which is a Western hemispheric power.
And so I don't understand why we have to have this notion that it's Russia against the West. It's why he doesn't trust the West. We don't trust him. Like, what's the dynamic? Why are we in this situation where Russia doesn't conceptualize itself as part of the West?
In the 20th century, it's hard to know exactly where Russia would have gone, except that Bolshevism, which triumphed in 1917, was an explicit rejection of the Western political economic model and a move in a different, unique direction. So there was a narrative of Russian uniqueness, and there is an inherent sort of Russian messianism, and the messianism actually goes all the way back to Ivan the Terrible. But the Bolsheviks absolutely saw themselves as the kernel of a world revolution, and assumed naturally that the entire capitalist world was seeking to destroy them. And to be fair to them, of course, the initial reaction of the Western powers was, in fact, to try to crush the Bolshevik Revolution. And we did have American troops land in Russia during the Civil War to try to help the white forces defeat the Bolsheviks. So there was an initial Western, and the British and the French did too. So there was an initial sort of Western intervention against the Bolshevik Revolution, which gave just a little bit of color to this. But the anti-Westernism and the notion of an encirclement and being at permanent war with the entire capitalist world is inherent to Marxism and Leninism. And then what did the Bolsheviks do? They systematically cut the Soviet society off from the world and took all control of communications, prevented people from leaving the Soviet Union. It's one of the ways that you can tell a legitimate state from a prison with a government is, does it allow its people freely to leave? And the Soviet Union did not. The Soviet Union, the laws prevented people from leaving without special permissions and so on. And it was a prison with a government.
That's the certain hallmark of a totalitarian society, is that you cannot, it's a prison, essentially.
Right, exactly right. So that was
so the Russians, so that you think there's inertia in some sense, even though Russia is no longer a Bolshevik state? You think there's inertia in the distrust of the West that probably developed even before the Bolshevik Revolution?
I don't think that there was a huge amount of inertia along those lines among Russians themselves. Ideologies are large, sprawling, and complex. People can believe in parts of them while rejecting other parts of them. I'm willing to believe that Putin was never a committed communist per se, but it is apparent that Putin accepted the special destiny of the Soviet Union or Russia in the world to be a superpower and to have influence beyond the norm, and accepted that the world was hostile and was seeking to prevent the Soviet Union or Russia from having that role. When Putin is talking about the geostrategic calamity of the fall of the Soviet Union, what he really means is the loss of Russia's privileged position as one of the two rulers of the world. And what he is aspiring to is reestablishing that.